Welcome to part 3 of state-of-the-art underwater carp fishing. My name's Danny Fairbrass and we're here at the fantastic RMC Blue Pool to watch these fish feeding at real close quarters. You remember in part 1 we captured those fish at Horseshoe feeding right in front of the camera. In part 2 we showed you loads of technical stuff about how things work and how they look underwater. In this part we're back to those fish feeding on the bottom. We've got the camera down there just off the side and we've managed to get some fantastic footage of fish coming up the shelf and feeding on free offerings and feeding on the hook baits as well. As you can see now, we've got a little bit of a ripple coming into this corner. It hasn't always been like that. It's been flat, calm and red hot a lot of the time, and that's affected how the fish feed underwater. So for the first couple of days it was really hard going. We're getting consistent action now, but if we go back to when we first started, you can see the fish's reaction to rigs on the bottom, their reaction to the line, and show you just how difficult it is to get bites in the day if the water's clear. We've used loads of different rigs and I've had a progression myself through different things to get more and more effective in these very difficult conditions. So without further ado, I'm going to put in a little bit more bait, get these fish feeding in again, and we'll take you back to the start and you can see exactly what their reaction was like in the hot conditions. So this is our first day at the Blue Pool. I'm just going to talk you through the bits and pieces of kit I'm using first of all before we actually put the rig out. A few new bits and pieces here. Beautiful tournament end toes, a new reel from Daiwa that they've just sent through to us. Absolutely stunning looking reel, really nice performance. Nice line clip on it there. If I turn that round, you see that lovely big line clip on there. Really kind to the line. Beautiful line lay as you can see, and I've got 17-pound X line on here, the fluorocarbon that I used in parts 1 and 2 of the underwater videos. Sinks really well, less visible than all the other monos. Here we're fishing over to the far margin and there's deep water in between, and what we want to do is get that line to sink down the slope so anything near the rig is on the bottom, so the fish are not going to be spooked by it, because we've seen the fish moving up and down that far margin. And I'm using this because I don't want to spook the fish by having something tight all the way over to it. So what we've got on there as well, if I slide that down, we've just got a non-toxic Olivet. That's just from Preston Innovations, that one. Just like a 5-gram non-toxic Olivet used for pole fishing. It's got a little bit of tube through the middle of it to protect the line, and that just sits down on top of the rig tubing like that, and when we cast that's going to fly back up the line just a bit and pin that last bit of line down on the bottom, and then of course because this X line is so heavy it's going to exaggerate that and just lay along the bottom right near where the rig is. So that's very important. Then what we've got with it, we've got a bit of car key rig tubing, and what I've done to this, I've just dotted it with a marker pen just to break up the line along the bottom. So there's a little bit of brown marker pen dotted all the way along there, just from stuff we've seen on the other underwater film. And if you can break up that line it makes everything slightly less visible. And then lead system wise, just a standard lead clip with a 2-ounce gripper lead, because it is a very steep slope over there, so we want a gripper lead on so it doesn't roll down the slope. Held on there with a carpe rubber on the back of the lead clip, and notice it's not pushed on all the way. That's something I see a lot of people do wrong with lead clip system, is they push the rubber on too far and it stops the lead from coming off. So we want the lead to come off if it gets caught in something out there by the rig. And you can see as well there, we've got a little bit of silicone on the top of the lead there, just over the top of the swivel, and all that's doing is just stopping any glint coming off the swivel and just holding everything nice and streamlined and making it even more anti-tangle. So nice neat little setup there. Size 8 swivel pulled into the end of the lead clip, and then one of our quick links, which is how I'm going to hook the hook link onto and then cover up with a bit of that same silicone sleeve on there just to neaten the whole rig up. So we'll put this down and then I'll show you the hook link. True Blue Peter style. Here's one we made earlier. It's £15 hybrid. This is the hook link that's just about due out into the shops now. It's the stuff I was using on part 1, but it's a new version of it. We've used a new braid inside the fluorocarbon coating, and it makes it even more robust, and it means you can tie all the knots you want to tie in this and you won't get any problems with the coating breaking. So we've got a slightly stiff coating and then an exposed section there by the hook with a little bit of shrink tube just curving on the bottom of the hook just to turn it round and catch into that bottom lip of the fish. And then we've got a size 8 wide gape, one of our Teflon coated hooks, a very short hair, and one of those superb mainline fusion pop-ups. Little tiny shot underneath the hook, and that's just going to sit just exactly as I'm holding it there. That's how that's going to sit on the bottom. And we're going to put this out. We've not put a lot of feed in the swim at all because we want to gauge the fish's reaction to pop-ups first before they become preoccupied with the stuff on the bottom. So we've deliberately not put any spod mix out because we don't want those fish to start feeding in amongst all those stones and start ignoring the pop-ups, which is the thing that I think was happening on part 1 of the video. The fish were so preoccupied on the spod mix, anything off the bottom was being ignored. Not because it wasn't a food item or it wasn't edible, but just because it wasn't hard on the bottom. So we've resisted the temptation to put my favourite mix out, and we just put a little bit of bait in the swim to get the fish interested. They're coming in now, they're having a little bit of a feed, but there's not so much small stuff out there that they're getting preoccupied. So we're going to put this rig out now, see what the fish's reaction to this one is. If we get a bite on this one and we're happy with the way that it's acting underwater, then we're going to change the rig round and we're going to put something similar out but on a braided hook link rather than on a coated hook link like this, and see if that acts differently to the coated one. So I'm going to hook this on now. Little bit of that same silicone just slides onto the hook link. You see there, that's just slid on the hook link like that. That's going to cover up the quick link, and then I'll just hook onto the quick link like that, and then just slide that rubber over the top, and that's it, done. That's what I use for all my rigs now. I use quick links all the time, so once that swivel's been pulled into the lead clip, you don't need to pull it back out again, so it keeps it in there nice and tight all the time and doesn't cause any wear on the lead clip. So another nice little feature there. I'm going to put on a bit of solar foam as well. The reason for that is I've clipped up what I think is right next to the camera, but if it's not right next to the camera, if I've got a bit of solar foam on the hook, that hook's going to be popped up straight off the lead until the foam melts. So I can just tease the rig back a little bit, get it into position. The solar foam will then eventually melt and the hook will just sit down on the bottom perfectly. So I'm going to get a bit of that solar foam out, put that on. This is one of those things that you should always keep in your bag. A bit of this foam, you never know when you're going to need it. If you're casting onto weed, or you just want the hook bait to be nice and tight to the hook when you cast so the hair doesn't tangle. I'm just going to fold that up into a tiny little bit, and I'm just going to hook it onto the hook. Literally just once, just hook it on almost like a bit of bread flake onto the hook like that. That's all I'm doing, just to hold it off the bottom. It also makes it easy for us to see it with the camera, and then eventually that will melt and the whole thing will just drop down nicely onto the bottom. So we'll get this one out now. Hopefully it's going to drop right first time. First cast with my new reel, so it'll probably go wrong, but if it does, we'll just get it back out there again. Okay, let's go. What I'm going to do is just dip this reel in the water. Right, got to cast this underneath a tree and out to that spot, which is no mean feat. Facing into the sun as well, could make it harder for myself if I tried. Right, let's see what that looks like underwater. I think it's going to be a little bit too far. This is the main reason we've chosen the blue pool, crystal clear water and fish that have been fished for a number of years, so they're going to be well aware of rigs, and I think this is going to be a very true representation of what most carp anglers have to encounter in their own fishing. And we see there as the solar foam starts breaking away, we'll see the pop-up just drift down onto the bottom and actually land away from the lead system. And you need to be using a slow sinking hook bait for it to work in that way. If you use a standard bottom bait, it drops so quickly onto the bottom that the hook link will loop up. You see there, just slowly drifting away from the lead, absolutely perfectly. A normal bottom bait would fall straight down on top of the lead. 3 fish into the swim, and they're obviously aware they're being fished for. We can't tell exactly what they're frightened of, but they're certainly aware of something. And it may be that we're using a bait off the bottom, and that's what's giving them some caution. Fish seem to be feeding very close to the bottom in almost exactly the same way they did at Horseshoe in part 1. Bearing in mind we've not put a lot of bait out, just a few pellets and some fusion boilies, and those fish's noses are almost glued to the bottom. So I really do think that when you're fishing over this kind of gravel bottom in clear water in the day, pop-ups are just not the one. What we're going to do as well is we're going to give you some live commentary from the bivvy where the monitors are, where we're watching the underwater footage as it happens, to give you some idea of just how exciting and just how frustrating it can be watching this stuff as it happens. There are obviously times when we're getting extremely excited when it looks like we're going to get a bite, and those are the times where it's very difficult to curb your language. So there's going to be some recordings that we simply can't give you because of the language at the time, and I'm sure any carp angler is going to be fully aware just what it would be like to watch this sort of stuff as it happens. Now that is extremely interesting. That fish has gone down to feed, touched the rig tubing. It's obviously felt something that it doesn't like, that it sees as dangerous, and it's spooked off. And that just reinforces just how important it is to get everything pinned down onto the lake bed as much as you can. You see there, his mouth's extended, he's touched the tubing, and he doesn't like it, he's off. It's something, if we didn't have underwater cameras like this, we'd have no idea that sort of thing was happening. So it's so important to get everything pinned down on the bottom, and this very rough gravel makes it very, very difficult for us to do that. The lead's only got to land funny and everything's off the bottom, so you need to get that tubing as heavy as you possibly can by putting bits of heavy metal putty on it or critical mass putty, and keep it pinned down right on the deck. Another fish there that I think has seen the pop-up, seen that there's something not right, and spooked away from it.
لا Right, yeah, big
commons.
fish, getting really excited. Commons, mirrors. Right, we've got a mirror now. Kev coming towards into shot. Look at this, come on.
Come on, kids.
Oh, come on,
kids.
babies. Come on, look at that. Come on, my son. Come on, baby. Right,
God.
no swearing.
We've got
to have one. Got to
now.
catch this common. Come on, my love. Yeah. They're happy with that. They're happy with that.
That gives you just a little taster of just how exciting it was watching this stuff unfold as it happens. Now, everybody's going to get something different from this film because we're all going to use our own angling experiences to base our conclusions. Got a fish right over the rig now. Now, that's an ideal example. I feel that that fish has got past the lead system, it's got past the tubing, it's got to the hook bait, and the fact that it's a pop-up has spooked it off the rig. Now that's just my opinion. I'm not saying my opinions are the gospel at all, but they have to be there as a guide. You see there, he's gone over the top of the tubing, he's actually mouthed the tubing and it hasn't spooked him. He's carried on going towards the bait, and as he's got to the hook bait, then he's spooked. And I don't know whether it's off the sight of it or off the feel of it, but there's something that he definitely didn't like. And that's the sort of footage that is putting me off of using pop-ups in the daytime in these conditions. You've got to remember as well that these are probably the hardest conditions in which to get a bite. Really clear water, bright sunshine, and very, very rough gravel. And what that does is it makes it very difficult to keep everything pinned down to the lake bed. You can see there some of the tubing's off the lake bed. Without this kind of filming, we'd never have any idea that it was like that. And there's very, very little that we can do to actually affect that. But what you do have to think is, if the fish can get caught in these conditions and we can overcome the problems in these conditions, then it's going to make a big, big difference to other conditions as well. So what we learn from this film is going to have an impact on fishing on any lake. What you need to bear in mind as well is that we've condensed down 5 days of constant underwater footage into 3.5 hours. So patterns have emerged that we're just not able to show you in their entirety because of the time constraints on the film. So all of my commentary is also based on a pattern that's emerged from all of the underwater footage that I've watched. Now that fish doesn't appear to be spooking off of the appearance of the rig, but it does seem to be really preoccupied on these response pellets, even though we've just put a few into the swim. And I'd say that if you're feeding pellets of any kind, then you really don't want to have a bait sitting above them by way of a pop-up. And in fact, what I'd be inclined to do is cut your bottom bait down to the shape of a pellet and fish that over the top. Even if you're feeding boilies, cut the hook bait down so it's more pellet sized and pellet shaped, and I reckon that's going to get you more bites. One pattern that certainly did emerge is that the tench would only come into the area and feed at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. In the middle of the day they weren't in the swim at all, even though the carp were still feeding, the tench weren't. And that's something that did continue over the course of the shoot, and it makes a lot of sense as to why tench fishing is much better first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening as well. And we are into a tench. all day long. There's a carp right in front of it. Right in front of it, and the tench just taking it first. He's having a go for a little tench. Just see the lead hanging there in the clear water. All day long sitting out there, and to get one of them. Oh. Oh, just hooked. Just under the chin. Just on the outside of the lips. Oh, pop him back in the net for a minute. Obviously got a taxi down from Horseshoe. And the curse of the tench continues. Not what we're fishing for, but we caught him all the same. About £4, I suppose, something like that. Right, let's get him back. Oh. Okay, it's the second morning. As you've seen, we had a tench snatch the bait right from the jaws of a carp just before it got dark last night. About £4, really dark looking fish. But we've got up early again. As we expected, the fish are out there on that spot now. The heat of the day's not come in yet. So what we're going to do is put the rig out that I recast just before it got dark. And what that rig was exactly the same lead system, same type of hook link, the hybrid, but a bottom bait rather than a pop-up, because we noticed a couple of times yesterday when the carp did approach that pop-up, one spooked off the sight of it and the other one spooked off the feel of it. So we reckon, just as we found in part one, that pop-ups in very clear shallow water are not the one. So we're going to put a bottom bait out, and then if we get a fish on that, we're going to put a pop-up out straight after and see if we can gauge the fish's reaction to that. But we've put a little bit of bait in this time, put a little bit of hemp, a little bit of response pellet, a few chopped up fusion boilies, a few small fusion boilies. So there's a lovely little mix of bait out there in front of the camera. The carp have already been in investigating it, and there's been more than we've seen before. So all that's looking good. So I'm going to just hook a little bit of foam on this rig now, and then I'm going to get that back out there on the spot. Just compress that foam up nice and tight. As you can hear there, our man in the bivvy has got carp actually feeding in the shot. So that rig is now ready to go. So I'm going to get it out now. Get your Polaroids on quickly. We're still clipped up from yesterday. It's got a bit of glare over there coming in from the side, so it makes it hard to see our little marker on the top of the camera. That should be pretty good. Let's just leave that for a minute and go and have a look. We see here as the solar foam breaks away and the bottom bait drops down to the bottom, the stiffness of the hybrid hook link has actually pushed it slightly away from the lead. But sometimes the weight of that bottom bait will fall so quickly that it will actually loop up off the bottom. Now you can see there that the fish are still spooky of the rig, even though that tubing is camouflaged pretty much as good as anything's ever going to be. The lead blends in really well, yet they're still aware they're being fished for. Now, if you try to imagine what it would be like with a dark coloured rig tube and a dark coloured main line stretching straight out to the rig with no flying back lead and no slack line, you can see just how frightening that would be for the fish. Bear in mind, this is my best camouflage setup with the line slackened off. Remember, we've got the fluorocarbon X line, which is almost invisible underwater. We've got a flying back lead as well, and yet the fish are still aware that they're being fished for. It just shows you just how much attention you should pay to hiding everything on the bottom. And just like in part one, that tench has picked up the hook bait and spat it out before it's hit the lead. So if they don't move with the hook bait in their mouth, they can get rid of it. And that's something for all you tench anglers out there. I really do believe that when you're tench fishing with a lead, you want to have as short a hook link as you can possibly get away with. If you know that lead's not penetrating into the bottom, a 2 or 3 inch hook link is going to be far more effective than something a fair bit longer than that. Bearing in mind this hook link's only 5 or 6 inches long, and that tench has easily picked up the bait and got rid of it. So when you're fishing for smaller fish like tench, and also for smaller carp, you want to be scaling down the size and the length of everything to turn more pickups into fish in the net. This is a fish we've nicknamed Popeye, or the friendly common, because he's been in the swim fairly regularly throughout the shoot. We did notice that some of these carp are definitely territorial. We're seeing the same fish coming through again and again. That makes a lot of sense when you hear a lot of top anglers saying that they fish in certain swims to catch certain fish. As the footage develops, you'll see that we're getting the same fish in the swim again and again with the odd few new arrivals. But it definitely suggests that some fish, even in a small lake like this, do tend to stay in one area of the lake. Popeye still appearing cautious of the rig. These fish are definitely aware they're being fished for, even though we're trying to hide everything as much as possible. Now if you imagine in this situation, we've got a tight line running out to the rig. We've got some dark rig tube that's coming off the bottom almost straight away. Imagine these fish trying to feed around that. I don't think they get even as close as they are to the rig now. It just shows you how easy it can be to have a blank day when you're right on the fish, but the way you're fishing for them is causing the blank. It's making them cautious around the rig, and they're avoiding the area where the rig's on the bottom. So I don't think you can pay enough attention to slackening off in these conditions, using hard to see mono, using hard to see rigs, because I truly believe that if we had a darker colour presentation on now with a tighter line, I don't think they'd be getting even this close to it. Popeye there has touched the tubing and again felt something that he's
not sure about, that he thinks is probably dangerous, and he spooks off the rig. And this is something, it's almost impossible for us to overcome this kind of situation. The very, very rough gravel, the big stones are lifting the tubing off the bottom. Popeye's just touched it there, realised something's not right and spooked away. And I think there's very, very little we can do in this situation other than to avoid fishing amongst such large stones. But if the fish are there, obviously you've got to fish for them in those conditions. See how carefully the fish are picking the baits up off the bottom. How particular they seem to be. I think from watching this footage, I think the finer and the less detectable your hook link and your hook are, the more naturally they behave when a fish picks them up, the more chance you've getting a bite. You see there, we're having to circle the rig constantly just so that we can pick it out against that gravel bottom. Yet the fish still seem to be aware of its presence.
So we're on to the evening of day 2 now. I'm going to change the presentation around a little bit because we noticed earlier on today in that fantastic footage we've got of those carp feeding up the shelf that they ate everything other than the bait around the rig. So I've changed the rig, but I've resisted the temptation to change more than one thing. I've just changed the hook link, and what I've done is I've changed over to a longer 10-pound IQ fluorocarbon hook link, which is as invisible a hook link as you're going to get. Now, it may make a difference, it may not, but if I change more than one thing on the rig and I catch a fish, I don't know which thing it was that made the difference. So I'm just going to do that for now. We've got some other little tricks up our sleeve as well to do, but we're going to do that for now. And it's worth stressing that this type of fishing is extreme. The water's very shallow, it's very clear, it's sunny as well, and the fish can see a lot more than in a lot of carp fishing situations. So this is not the rule everywhere, but it's just what's happening here. And I think if you can scale things down here and catch them in these conditions, obviously it's going to work elsewhere as well. So we're going to put that out now. like I say, probably a 10-inch, 10-pound IQ hook link. I've changed the style of the hook, and I've changed it to a size 10 long shank X because I prefer those with a slightly stiffer hook link. I was using a wide gate before, and I'm using a long shank X now. So the bait's the same, the hook link's different. That's it. So let's get this back out on the spot. I'm going to put a little bit of soda foam on again, which gives us a chance to see where the rig's laying, because now we've changed over to a bottom bait. We need all the help we can get to see where it's landing, and it's a very tricky cast over there. So what I'm going to do is just hook on a little bit of that foam. Unfortunately at the moment I can't use a PVA bag because it is such a tricky cast, but as I get used to it, I'm sure we'll be putting bags on a bit later.
Now, one thing we noticed straight away was that as soon as the rig was taken out of the water, the fish fed with more confidence. They stayed in the area longer, and it just proves just how aware they were that there was a rig in the water. There was something dangerous in the swim. And it can work to your advantage to actually leave the rig out of the water for a while, let the fish come in and feed. Just like we do when we're fishing on the surface, we feed without any line on the water. They come in and feed, we put a rig out and we catch one. So you can do exactly the same thing on the bottom.
Hopefully that's going to be pretty good. Sink that line down.
Here we go. Oh, he's seen something, has he? No, he's feeding away. Yeah, common in the swim now, feeding, mate. Common in the swim, feeding. Now that's encouraging, mate. The fish are moving up the shelf, but they're coming up the right hand side, so they're not going to be coming over the rig and the line. They're coming the other way at it now, mate, so it's working over. Whoa, we're close. Yeah. Oh, we're close now, baby. Yeah, we're close. Absolutely close. It's the pretty mirror, come on. I only had to go, oh, he's a little bit to the left. We've got the pretty mirror in shot, probably about 19 pound, I would say, mate. What a lovely fish, and it's coming towards the camera. Come on. Lovely feeding at the back of the swim. Absolutely fantastic. Look at the pecks on the fish, it's just amazing. Oh, what a beautiful fish. What a privilege. Absolutely amazing. Look at that. Oh, has she seen something? Has she seen something? Someone hiding behind the play and record button. Go on, son. Go on, son. No, they've been coming. We've had them here, look. Really? Just in there, look. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he didn't like something there, did he? Come on, darling. That's a good one. That's the pretty mirror. That's a good Come on, darling. She knows. Territorial fish that is as well. Come on, baby. Come on, sweetheart. Look, look, just there, look. Come to Uncle Danny's rig. Yeah. That's the pretty one, that is. Lovely. Do you know why we call her the pretty one? Come on, son. Don't reel it.
Right, the rig's been out there about an hour now, and we've noticed again that the carp are aware of its presence in the swim. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some more little changes to the look of the rig to try and make it less visible. Remember, we've gone over to that IQ hook link, which when we fished on Horseshoe definitely made a difference. Now we're finding that the fish are still spooking off of the IQ and everything else as well. And I think it's just the presence of the rig out there that they're aware of. I don't think it's one particular component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a smaller lead, first of all, a 2 ounce flat swivel pair. The gradient over there I don't think is so steep that this lead's going to roll down, and it's a smaller lead as well, and it just looks more like a stone. So what I'm going to do first of all before I put that on is I'm going to rough it up just to mat up the coating a little bit. And all you want to do is literally just use the gravel in the swim in front of you. Not difficult to do. No fancy stuff required, and that's it, done. As you can see there, I've just taken the edge off of the coating, just roughed it up a little bit just so it blends in that bit better. I'm going to put a silicone sleeve on the end there as well, and then the thing I'm going to attach it to is one of these fellas, which is a prototype leader material that we've had done for us. Beautifully fused at either end, all neatly tapered down and clear. Now we've dropped this in the edge earlier on, it looked pretty good, certainly better than rig tubing, and it seems that in this situation we're going to need it. Remember, I've got khaki rig tube on, I've even flecked it up with a brown pen. It looks as good as I think you're ever going to get tubing to look, and it seems that the fish are still aware of the rig. We don't know what part of it they're aware of, but all I'm doing is everything I possibly can to make it less and less visible. I don't want to go and use no tubing at all because I'm worried about the line getting under the scales of the fish and flicking them off, and there's no point fishing like that if you're going to do any damage to the fish. So you need something behind the lead, but this to me is an improvement. We're going to put it out and see if it does actually make a difference. I've also noticed that the rig, believe it or not, is falling too close to the camera, and the fish are liking feeding a little bit further down the slope. So I'm going to try and get it about a foot further away from the camera if we can. Keep the hook link the same, and then see what occurs. I'm also going to change the flying back lead to one that flies back a bit further, because we've been getting line bites as well, so the fish are obviously swimming into the X line a little bit away from the rig. So I'm going to put on a Gardner flying back lead, which has got a larger bore and it's a bit heavier too, so it's going to fly back that little bit further. Just doing everything we can to get a setup that the fish are not spooked by. And then we can start testing hooking arrangements and that sort of thing, because if we can't get a pickup, we can't test how effective different hooking arrangements are. Clip that onto our lead clip as normal. Wet the back of the clip, rubber on. Now you've got a lovely taper between the top of the lead clip there, slightly thicker diameter there, and then tapered down to a thin diameter there. Beautiful taper all the way down that. Really neat system. Prototype leaders these are that we've asked the fly tying guys to make for us, and they look pretty spot on, but we'll have to wait and see if it does actually make a difference. Put our quick link back on. Hook link back on. Remember, the same hook link as before, that's not going to change. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put a little tiny PVA bag on this time, rather than a bit of solar foam, just so the rig lays out nice and straight. Just going to use a couple of broken boilies. Broken one, perhaps a couple of whole ones, and a few little fusion pellets in our bag. Just a tiny, tiny little bag. That's better. diddy little bag, almost like a 20mm bait. And because we've got a mono hook link on, we haven't got to worry about the hair tangling or anything, so I can just hook this on and then cast it out. So just a little bit smaller, but it's going to make casting easy. It's a tricky old cast over there. Right, just going to check the point of the hook just by running it onto my thumb. Yep, that's catching hold really easily. So that's nice and sharp still. Bait's okay. So we're just going to hook this through the top of the bag like that, and that's ready to go.
Here we go, fish coming in now, look. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on, son. Come on, keep coming. Come on, son. That's the pretty mirror. And he wasn't speaking there, was he, mate?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, go on, son.
Spoken, is it, son?
That's a nice fish, mate, isn't it? You know, it's in pretty.
It's a lovely fish.
See, they're in so quick on that, ain't they? Now, do you see what I mean? Do you reckon we should just leave that spinning?
Leave it running that, look.
Gotta do. But I am quick minded, aren't I?
Oh look!
Oh look! Come on, baby. Come on, my little lovely.
Go on, son.
Go on, baby. That's gotta be close. Come on, no, come on. Come on, my son.
It's got something inside as well.
Yeah. Did it?
Yeah, it's something.
Not this time of year either, you know what I mean? Yeah, Gary's it to me. Go on, son. No, don't.
Can't feed you.
Yeah, of course. Or whatever, do you know what I mean? You know? Go on, son. That was a nice fish, mate.
Yeah, it's spooked off something. Something. They get into it and then going. Whereas before,
That's pretty, isn't it? Yeah, nice though, nice shot though.
yeah.
Dorsal up.
So, go on, son.
Go on, son, that's close.
That's close.
Go on, son. It's just watching for spooky now. That ain't spooked, is it? Had a bit of grub and he's pulled away in it.
Right, so it's the morning of day 3. What I'm going to do now is give myself hopefully another little edge towards getting a bite off these very wary fish, and that's making up my stick mix. And it's going to be a boilie based stick mix, which is different from what I've used in part 1. As always, the meat and marine ground bait forms the basis of my stick mix, but it is only the basis this time. I'll just rough a bit of that up. Using your compressor just to rough that up a bit. the fast release and the slow release of these two, I've not found one's would be majorly different from the other, both very effective. Right, to that we add our amino black ground bait, and what that's going to do is that's going to darken the whole thing down and just give another type of attraction into it. We'll just mix those two. I've found with stick mixes, the closer you can get them to the colour of the lake bed, the more bites you get. Let's darken that up nicely. Our old faithful mainline Foss oil, gonna give the thing a fishy sort of a smell and taste to it. And by adding more oil, you extend the melt time of your PVA. So if you're fishing in deep water, adding a bit of oil is going to help you, because it's going to take just that little bit more time, you know, for the PVA to actually melt. It doesn't give you a chance in the summer to wind it in and cast it back out again, but that is a little advantage if you're fishing deep water. Okay, so that's our basis. Now what we want to do is make our boilie section. Some of our fusion boilies, a few at a time. Really smell that oil kicking up. Really want to get these chopped up really finely. Not nowhere near fine enough yet. And using a little sealable bag like that allows you to mix the whole lot up quickly. Now if I was doing a long session, I'd probably mix a bit more than that up to begin with. We've just got to make sure there's no real big bits in there. There's a few that I'd say a bit too big. We don't want any of those getting pierced by the hook link and ending up on the hook link, so we'll just chop those up a bit more. That's better. Right, so that's our boilie crumb done. Now what we're going to do, if I put that straight into a bag, that boilie crumb will compress down and stay in a lump. But if I mix it with a little bit of the ground bait, it can't stick together so much, so it will definitely fall apart. Just any larger bits of boilie just crumbing up there. But just a little tiny bit of this stuff, not even 50-50 really, and then shake it up. That's it, that's lovely. And to this, I'm going to add a bit of the new fuse, the new liquid for the fusion. A little bit of that's going in, so we've got 2 liquid attractors in our stick mix. Lovely, just a tiny bit of that. Don't want to overdo it. Right. I'm going to shake that up, and our bag mix is ready to go. You'll see why I've made 2, and I actually put a bag together. Oh, it's lovely. Pucker. Right, let's get a bag mix done. Right, so what we're going to do to our boilie mix, just add a couple of pellets. I'm going to use these new high betaine fish ones from Mainline. Just a few of them. We've had those in our spod mix since we started fishing. So a few of them into there. This will also help it to break up. And then also a few of our fusion response pellets as well, just a few. That's going into our boilie mix as well. See how such a small amount of baits can make so much stick mix. That's a lovely, lovely stick mix, that. Okay, right, now this is why we need 2 stick mixes. We have a look at that. Bits of boilie and stuff in there. Now if I use that as my stick mix completely, if the point of the hook went into that bit of boilie, could render the rig completely useless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a bit of the neat stuff at one end that the hook gets pulled into, and then this mix at the other end. This is the stuff I want out there more than anything. Remember, it's got that in it as well, but I don't want to risk pulling the point of the hook into a pellet when they go soft or into a bit of boilie. So that's why I'm going to mix the two. So okay, right, no picking any of this up because it's oily gear, just a little scoop and then compress that down with a compressor, and then the major part is going to be our boilie stick mix. Compress that down as well. That's our stick half done. Tying an overhand knot, tying the second overhand knot, cut between the two. I'm sure you've seen this a million times, and that's it, done. Okay, so just with your splicing needle, just get the gate and then end of the hook link into there, and just pull that through like that. And just pull in the hook into the end of the bag. Sorted.
Now the reason we've taken the clear leader off is because it didn't appear to make any difference to how confidently the fish would feed over the rig. So we've gone back to what I know best and what I'm most confident with, the carpe rig tube flecked with brown. What we actually found with the clear leader was, during the middle of the day when it was most sunny, the clear leader actually appeared to reflect some of the light and appeared to be more visible to the fish than the tubing that had been broken up with the marker pen. So whilst they look really good in the edge and appear to be less visible than the tubing, in a fishing situation, the way they're made at the moment doesn't seem to make them more effective. Certainly not in this situation anyway, with the rough gravel, the clear water and the bright sunny conditions. That's Mr. Popeye back in the swim again. More evidence that he's territorial to this part of the lake. We're starting to see a few new fish into the swim now, but the ones that have been in there since the word go are still there as well. Maybe that they're territorial, maybe that they just like the bait that we're putting in, but there's certainly no denying that they keep wanting to come back onto this spot. This film also confirms what we saw in part 1, that the carp and the tench will definitely feed together. So if you find yourself catching tench, it may not be a bad thing. Carp may be in the area too. There's no evidence at this point either that the carp, even though there's far more of them around than the tench, are actually pushing the tench out of the area. In contrast, we've actually seen the tench spooking the carp away. Popeye just feeding very cautiously over the top of the rig. It's very, very difficult to pick that rig out against the bottom, yet the fish are still aware of it. An ideal scenario now would be to actually fish down the slope and actually go round to the adjacent bank where I'm casting over to, and actually line the line down the slope. So the first thing that the fish come into contact with is the hook bait rather than the line. But that would mean fishing from an area that's not actually got a swim in it, which would obviously be against the rules of the fishery. So we've avoided doing that. We know that if we did that, we'd have a much better chance of a bite. But we're fishing in just exactly the same way as anybody else could, to give a true representation of what's going on out there and the sort of problems that you'll encounter in your own fishing. So you really do need to think about the angle of the line, the way it's going into the swim, where your bait's going in, and make sure that your bait is always just slightly past where your rigs are, so the fish are not feeding right over the top of the rig, so there's no chance of them coming into contact with it. And that's the mistake we've made here. We've scattered bait all around the swim, and we're finding the fish are feeding right over the top of the rig, and they're coming into contact with the tubing and the line at the same time. So you really, all you want to be doing is baiting up just slightly beyond where your rig is landing and drawing the fish into the rig, so the first thing they come into contact with is the hook bait.
Keep on that line, son. No, don't. Oh, spook the carp off. Can you believe it? I think we really got to catch this thing, haven't we, to be fair? No, we don't want to.
There's a carp coming behind it.
No.
Yeah, I thought it was. Oh, look.
Yeah, it's the pretty mirror, look.
So you've got walkie-talkie there, so I'll take the one off your...
Oh, look, come on. That's so close.
That's carp, mate. Come on, baby. That's a beautiful line, that is. Keep coming. Oh, look, it is the pretty mirror. No, it's not. Yes, it is.
This one.
Come on. That's close. That is close.
Right away, Joe. Right away.
Come on, son. No! Come on.
That's a catchable fish.
Yeah, it is. Ooh. Saw the line, I reckon, didn't it?
Don't know. Look, another one's coming right behind it, though.
Come on, mate, innit? Come on, son. Always up to be caught with fish. Ooh! son.
So close. Do you reckon it could be hooked up in that stick?
I can't see it.
Come on! These two have actually glued together.
Glued,
aren't
look. Yeah, they are Siamese. It's right over the line, should be. Seen it?
they? Don't spoke that one, eh?
No, he's not quite on the line yet though, is he? I reckon it's got to be a rechuck myself, mate. Come on, darling.
That's the bait, isn't it? Is that the bait?
Yeah, it
Is that
it
hook
is,
bait?
I reckon. Go on, son.
I thought that was the hook bait you just took then.
Oh,
Oh my god, they're all over us like cheap soup. Feeding though, isn't there? At least two. Was it three? It was a friendly common.
Yeah,
It was well spooky, that friendly common.
it is.
It's got them bulbous eyes though, isn't it? Probably
Yeah.
see more.
Yeah.
No, we ain't catching anything. We'll get this every morning. It's got to be right on it. It's got to be
Got to
right
be
on
on it. Go on, son. The line was laying over the stick. Over. Well, it's alright, I know you can hear me, mate. The line was laying over the stick. Because when you pulled back, the stick moved and everything, mate. You know the aliens who run the world, obviously they ain't no god in them. Look at that. No, they do, don't they? They sit up there, do you know what I mean? They're probably thinking, look at these low life form idiots, and it's like, they're playing with us, aren't they? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lovely lips. Oh, come on. Come on. Go on, son. You weren't coming close enough, was he, mate? Hey?
It's that one. Starting to get confidence again, right? There's one as well there.
We need that row of 6 in again, really, though. Here it is.
It's Popeye.
Popeye, look. Come on, son. Go on,
That's
son.
a catchable carp.
Yeah.
Turn around, you bugger.
Turn round. You know you want that pellet.
There's another fella. we're going to catch one of these.
Could be, but
There you go, look.
that's a nice fish.
Cheers.
It's the old con man again, wasn't it?
There he is.
There he is. He's seen that, hasn't he? That pellet. He likes to look at that. You saw his little eye twitch there, did you see that?
We'll have one eventually.
Go on,
Carp.
son. Go on, son. Go on, son.
That's so close.
That has to be close, yeah. 21, 25.
Look, mate, look, it's so close.
Lovely footage. Come on, darling. Oh, that's the pretty mirror. Come on, baby. Come on.
It's a lovely fish, isn't it?
Lovely.
Behind it as well,
Yeah. Oh no.
He's put by.
It is.
He's not going to catch him. He's far too cute.
He is, isn't he? It's a bit riggy. Right. The old peck's in reverse
Oh,
there,
look
didn't
at
it?
that.
Oh! Thank you too. Now why didn't we catch that? That's close.
Close enough.
Yeah. Oh, that is close. Come on, darling.
Come on, darling. Yeah.
Yeah.
This ain't far away, mate, is it?
No.
Kev, it's so close, it's unbelievable, this fish. That's the two baits there on its right, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Oh no.
It's must have
No,
seen it.
don't know.
Oh, this has got to have it.
That was a spook, wasn't it? Just get 13. So that's very important that we lock it out. Not even clocking it there yet, are we?
Two.
Come on, boys. Just check the display on that. If you got hold of that little bitty end of it.
Right over the top.
They're not happy, are they? Oh, lovely.
Anything happening? Over.
Yeah, great.
Go on, son. It's a friendly comment. That's a nice shot there, wasn't it? How far's he away then, Danny? Not a mile away, was he? We got a bite now, we probably heart attack or something. How close is that? Go on, son. Go on, son. Go on. All right. Okay. Right. Go on. Go on. Go on. Go on, son. Go on, son.
One, two, three. Look. 4, 5, 6. They're just waiting for that line to come out of the water. Now the thing I noticed there was when that carp was right over the top of the rig, it wasn't spooking on the rig at all, and it actually did try to pick up the hook bait, but it appeared that because it was attached to something, it didn't go up into its mouth straight away, so it just moved on to the next one. And that's a situation where I think we could have possibly caught that carp on a smaller hook bait, one that had been chopped down a bit to the same sort of size as a pellet, and a lighter, more flexible hook link may have actually caused that bait to go in the fish's mouth. So when you're fishing over the top of spod mix like we are now, with lots of hemp out in the swim and small food items, I think it really does pay to have finer tackle on, smaller hooks and smaller hook baits as well. You're going to get bites on standard tackle, but I think you're going to get more bites on certainly smaller hook baits, and then if you fine the tackle down a little bit more and perhaps have a flexible end to the hook link rather than having mono straight through, which is something we found at layer pits in Colchester. Over the spotted areas, mono hook links don't work as well as combi links and braided hook links, and I found myself that if I put on a small pellet shaped boilie, I get more bites over the spod mix than I do on a standard round boilie, even a 14mm round boilie. So that's something you can definitely apply to your own fishing. If you're fishing over spod mix, you want a more flexible hook link, like a combi link or like a braided hook link, and then a smaller hook bait so it's similar to some of the small particles that you're using. And I think that's definitely going to get you more bites.
Yeah, Roger, 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 Roger. Don't do nothing. That's perfect. Absolutely lovely, mate. Lovely. Got it on film. Over.
Landed perfectly.
Oh, mate, there's a fish right over it already. Look at that. Oh! Oh, no, it's a tinkers over it. Oh, it's all right. Don't panic. He's gone.
He ain't gone.
No, but he's gone off it, look.
Now, since the making of part one, quite a few people have questioned me about the use of PVA sticks and PVA bags, because in part one a lot of those sticks and bags were dispersed before the fish ever got to the hook bait, so it seemed like they were completely useless. Now, I use a stick not just for attracting the carp into the hook bait, but making sure that everything lays perfectly on the bottom. You see the tench there, straight in on that. That's got to prove that they are more attractive than just a hook bait lying there on its own. And it hasn't completely dispersed the bag, and I think if we had a rig designed particularly for the tench, we probably would have caught that fish. So the sticks that I'm making up are definitely more attractive. And not only do they make the hook bait more attractive to the fish, but they guarantee that the hair and the hook link don't tangle on the cast, and they lay the rig out nice and straight so it's all lying perfectly ready for a bite. So even if that is dispersed, you know that the hook bait is still sitting perfectly So when it does get picked up, you hook the fish straight away. So it has got a dual purpose. If we look at our first bite in slow motion again, the stick has served a purpose. The fish has sucked up the remainder of the stick. It's actually picked up a big stone as well. Right in front of it's the hook bait, and bang, we've got him.
Oh, he's away!
Oh, he's going. He's going. Oh, he's got him right round into that corner under that tree. Oh, just tipped over the dorsal. He's really going, this little fish. Please stay on. Oh, there's a tree down there as well, I know. Come on, you little bugger. Oh, just shaking his head, just pinging over the dorsal now. Oh, God. Oh, come on. That's it, he's past the tree. These infinities are just lovely to play fish on. He's not big, and I don't think, but he's the first one, and he is very, very welcome. Amazing what the changing weather conditions can do to the way the fish feeds. Only a little one. Oh. Little Zach, as John calls him, little Zach Dingle. Get in the net. Come on, get in the net. Yes! Got him! Excellent. That was a long time coming. Oh, it's a little scarred one. It's got a little mark on one side of him, but lovely little plump fish. About 8 or 9 pound. No, we've got you. Sorry. Result. John said that was going to go, and it did. And the hook has just come out in the mouth. Look at that. Whew, that was lucky. It's only a little one, but very welcome all the same. Look at that pretty little thing. Oh, he's not happy about being caught. Just fold his fin flat against his body. And he is 10.5. The first of many, hopefully. Oh, it's all right, mate. Beautiful little thing. Thank you very much, my love. Let's get you back. See if we can catch your mum, because she is out there.
You're not going to do anything about that scar?
No. Nothing I can do, really. That is the smallest carp I've caught for a long while, but he's very, very welcome all the same. There you go, my love. Oh, don't want to be slipping in. There you go. Excellent. Right. I'm going to put the same presentation out again, because one's not really enough to tell me whether that's working really well. But if I get a second one, I will change the rig.
Now notice how the water started to cloud up since just before we got the bite and when we actually got the bite. And originally I thought that it was from an algae bloom, but now looking back at the footage again and again, I reckon it's come from the wind that sprung up that's blowing into this corner, and it's actually stirred the bottom up, lifted up all the suspended particles and started pushing them around at this end of the lake. And we noticed that this end of the lake clouded up that little bit quicker than the rest of the lake. So it's something you can use to your advantage if you notice there's been a spell of hot, clear weather where there's very, very little wind, and then you get a new wind spring up. Whatever direction it's in, it's worth looking at that area of the lake first, because if it stirs up the bottom, gives a more cloudy effect to the water, it could attract the fish in, and also it can disguise your rig. So if you're fishing in clear water conditions, the murky end of the lake has got to be a better place to start with regards hiding your end tackle and getting those bites more quickly. This obviously makes a lot of sense for anglers that are catching loads of fish, are the ones that are there most on the lake, and they're in tune with what the weather's doing and how the fish are reacting. Not all of us get the opportunity to be there as much as that, so you can study the weather prior to your session. And even if you can't actually be at the lake, if you notice a change in the weather coming, it's worth fishing based on that change and getting down to the windward end of the lake if the winds change round. So even if you're not actually at the water, you can still keep an eye on the weather conditions, and that can give you a very good starting point when you do actually get to the fishery. If you are interested in keeping in touch with the weather prior to your session, then I recommend you go onto a site called weather.co.uk. You can put in the town closest to where you're fishing, and it will give you an hour-by-hour forecast for the following 3 days, and then after that it will give you a morning and afternoon forecast for the following 7 days. So the 10 days prior to your session, you can get an idea of what the weather's going to be doing, and you can use that information to make the very most of your session when you're at the lake. It ain't a tench.
What one are you bugger? You're staying deep. Staying deep and really powering down. God, he's going for it, this fish. God. Just going mad in this deep margin down here. It's probably 8 foot, right under the rod tip. Oh! Another chunky little mirror. Seems to be common for in here. That's sort of the norm, if you like. It's amazing the difference the weather's made to the way these fish are feeding. Oh, go on, son, go on. Come to Papa. Come on. Yes. Number 2. He's a chunky little mirror. 2 scales. 12 pounds. Just over 12 and a half. Right, so that's 2 on the short hybrid hook link that we could not buy a bite on yesterday. It just shows you what the difference in conditions means. Oh, chill out, come on, chill, 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 chill. Oh. Get his, around his fin, there we go. Pucker. Lovely little thing. Ooh. Let's get him back. Try and get another one. Miniature 30-pounders these are, the little shape of these. Don't want to be going in myself. There you go, my love. Oh! And he's away. Right. So that's 2 on the very short hybrid hook link, size 6 wide gape hook, and a bottom bait, a fusion bottom bait, with a little tiny dynamite stick as I showed you earlier. So what we're going to do now is put on a braided hook link of the same sort of length, Gardner braid, and we're going to see what the fish's reaction to that is, if I can get back out on the spot, because there's a bit of wind now, so it's blowing the lead around. So let's get all this sorted. Okay, just had our second fish. Also, let's get some of that. Also on the hybrid hook link, 20-pound hybrid, size 8 wide gape hook. A little bit of shrink tube on it to turn it over, and it's worked really well. So just tying another bag now, just to keep them topped up. I've got a load done already, but I'm just keeping them topped up. So if we get a lot of bites, I've got plenty in reserve. And we're going to change the rig now. I've had 2 fish on the hybrid. I'm going to change over to a braided hook link. Same hooking arrangement, but a braided hook link made from Gardner's heavy braid. You can see that I've put a little tiny bit of Gardner's new putty in the middle of that. I've just dabbed that with a bit of super glue there and just rolled my fingers around that putty. So that's permanently on there, and what that's going to do is help to pin the whole lot down on the bottom, so there's no chance of the fish picking up the hook link as it's moving around the bait. We're going to put one of our dynamite sticks on again with a boilie crumb in it, whack that back out onto the spot and see what the fish's reaction to this is. I think I'm going to catch one almost straight away on this because it's a nice short hook link, and I think it's going to work pretty effectively, but we shall see. The last fish actually just got caught on a single hook bait because the tench had come in, tried to eat the bag, got away with it as the tench tend to. So we're just hooking that braid on just as we did with the hybrid and the fluorocarbon hook links, using our quick link there. So I'm not having to pull anything out of the lead clip. I've changed the lead as well. I've changed it to a 2.5 ounce rather than a 2 ounce flat swivel pair, again in the gravelly brown, because it's a little bit windy, so a heavier lead's going to go that little bit straighter because I'm having to drop it about this far from the camera. So just a slightly heavier lead there. That's all ready to go. Fish crashing out all over the place now. Got the wind pushing down. It's a northerly, it's been high pressure. You see now the clouds come in, the wind's pushing down here. Perfect conditions for this call. Now we've only got one rod out, which I think is a help as well. And all the stuff that, you know, they were virtually laughing at earlier on today, they're now getting caught on. So complete change around the fortunes. Let's hopefully we're going to get another one, or show that this stuff's not as effective
as a coated hook link. I've got to tell you, I've just got absolutely perfect in my ear. Buzzer on, and we're angling. Right, next one's going to be a stiff rig. If this one works, straight away we're going to put a stiff rig on and see what happens there. And then we might start mixing the length of the hook link up a little bit. So putting on an 18-inch hook link rather than the short hook links that I favour, and see what the fish's reaction to them is. We've got loads of other things we want to test. We want to test method feeders, all the different baits that you can use with method feeders. We couldn't get a pick-up on a pop-up. We're going to try pop-ups. Obviously we've got all the different particle baits to try, and loads of different bag mixes as well. So hopefully, you know, we can show a load more effective ways to fish, and obviously show a load of other ineffective ways to fish as well. So I'm going to get another rig tied and wait for the next run.